Once a man said something to me right to my face in front of everyone. It was at a meeting, about 20 people around. He looked at me and delivered a line calmly, almost casually, that was designed to destroy me publicly, to devalue me, to show everyone that I was worth nothing. Everyone fell silent. Everyone looked at me, waiting. And I didn't do any of the things I used to do. I didn't blush. I didn't make excuses. I didn't withdraw into myself. I didn't feel the ground slipping from under my feet. I just looked at him, calmly, quietly, the way you look at something uninteresting. And in that silence, in those 4 seconds of complete silence, something changed. Not in him, but in the room. The people around us started looking at him differently. He said something, and nothing happened. The punch missed, the weapon failed. He felt foolish in front of everyone. I did not plan this. I didn't prepare for this response. I just finally became the person I had been working to become for 20 years. A person who is impossible to humiliate. My name is Thomas. I am 64 years old, and I am a Buddhist monk. For 32 years, I have lived in a monastery in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And for the last 20 years, I have been teaching just one thing. Not meditation, not breath work, not enlightenment in some lofty sense of the word. I teach how to become invulnerable. Not rigid, not cold, not indifferent, but truly invulnerable. These are very different things, and the difference between them is the difference between a person who suffers in silence and a person who lives freely. Today, I am going to share with you 6 principles that we pass down in our monastery from generation to generation. Principles that shape a person so deeply that any insult just slides right off, never cutting skin, never leaving a mark. But first, the most important thing. The one piece without which nothing else works. Most people think the problem lies in the words that you need to find the right comeback, a clever phrase, a worthy counterattack. That is the wrong angle. The right question is not what to answer. The right question is, why does it get inside you in the first place? An insult is an arrow. But an arrow cannot wound someone who does not wear a target. The real work is not learning how to dodge, but learning how to remove the target entirely. That is what I'm going to talk to you about today. In our monastery, we have a tradition. When a new novice arrives for his first 3 months, nobody teaches him meditation. Nobody hands him profound books. Nobody discusses enlightenment with him. He is simply insulted. Not brutally, not to break him, but precisely and intentionally. The senior monks say hurtful things to him at the most unexpected moments, over meals, while sweeping the floors, out on a walk. They do it briefly, casually, as if just passing by, and they observe not what he answers, but what happens on his face in the first 2 seconds. Because right there, in those 2 seconds, lives the entire truth about a person. All of their vulnerability, all of their targets. A flush in the cheeks, a tightened jaw, eyes darting away, shoulders creeping up, hands suddenly looking for a place to hide. This is not a weakness of character. It is a map. A map of everything a person believes about themselves and everything they are terrified others might see. The first principle I am giving you today is called ma in Japanese. Space the gap, the pause between stimulus and response. Most people have no idea they even possess this gap. An insult lands and the body has already reacted. Your expression shifts, your voice shakes, everything tightens inside. It feels like it happens simultaneously, but it does not. Between stimulus and response, there is always a space. A tiny one, fractions of a second, but it is there. And in that space lies absolutely all of your freedom. The Japanese philosopher Morita Masatake wrote that you cannot control what you feel, but you can always control what you do with what you feel. That is Ma, the space between feeling and action. So, how do you expand it? Through one simple exercise that our novices do every single day for their first year. When something strikes a nerve, do nothing for 4 seconds. Just 4 seconds of absolute external calm. Inside, a hurricane could be raging. Outside, nothing but silence. Steady breathing, a level gaze, an expressionless face for 4 seconds. It seems like practically nothing. But here is what happens in those 4 seconds to the person who insulted you. They were waiting for a reaction. Any reaction. Pain, anger, confusion, excuses. They prepared for it. They only know what to do next if you react predictably. And you are not reacting. And in that silence, in those 4 seconds, they are left totally alone with their own words, with no reflection, no echo. Their weapon just hangs in the air, hitting absolutely nothing, and everyone around sees it. 4 seconds of silence speak louder than any comeback. They say your words are not important enough for me to react to them immediately. This is not arrogance. It is dignity. Do not practice this in the heat of an insult. That is too late. Practice it in ordinary life. When someone asks you a question, pause before you answer. When someone rushes you, slow down on purpose. When your phone rings, wait 1 extra ring before picking up. You are training the muscle of the pause, the exact muscle that will give you that space of freedom when you truly need it. The second principle is called Satsu clarification, and it is one of the most powerful tools I know because it does something incredible to an insult. It forces the insult to explain itself. Here is how it works. Most insults exist in a space of vagueness. Things like, "You just do not get it," or "Something is wrong with you," or "Wow, look at you today," or "You always do this." These words work precisely because they are blurry. Your brain panics and starts filling in the blanks. What exactly is wrong? In what sense? I do not understand how I look. And while your brain is busy with this frantic gap filling, you have already lost. You are already inside their frame. You have already accepted something as truth. Satsu destroys this mechanic with a single question. What exactly do you mean? Delivered calmly, without aggression, without irony, as if you are genuinely curious, as if the person said something completely neutral, and you just want to make sure you understood them correctly. And then, you just watch what happens next. The person who insulted you is now forced to explain themselves out loud in front of everyone. They have to unpack what was a vague hint into concrete words. And the moment they do that, they hear it themselves. They hear how it sounds, how foolish it is, how petty it is, how it speaks volumes about them and nothing about you. Most people at this point start to stumble. They say things like, "Well, I just meant that," or "No, I didn't mean it like that," or "Just forget it, it was a joke." The weapon is dismantled, the bullets are scattered on the floor. But there is a crucial nuance that most people miss. Asking, "What exactly do you mean?" only works if you ask it from a place of calm curiosity, not from a place of defense. The difference is massive. The exact same question, spoken with a tremble in your voice, is weakness. Spoken calmly and slowly, it is power. In our monastery, we have an exercise. We call it interrogation without accusation. 2 monks sit across from each other. One says something provocative, the other answers only with questions. Calm, clarifying questions, without a single trace of emotion in their voice, over and over, until the first one starts laughing at how absurd his own words sound under the weight of those quiet questions. Try this the next time someone says something hurtful to you. Do not argue. Do not defend yourself. Just ask, "What exactly do you mean?" Then stay silent and watch. In 1882 in Japan, there lived a Zen master named Hakun Yasutani. One of his students came to him one morning completely crushed. He said, "Master, a neighbor called me a fool in front of the entire village. I have not slept for 2 nights. How do I answer him in a way that restores my dignity?" Yasutani poured 2 cups of tea, placed one in front of the student, and said, "Drink." The student drank. "Was the tea hot?" "Yes." "Did you burn yourself?" "No, I blew on it." "There is your answer," Yasutani said, and added nothing more. The student thought about this for a long time and finally understood. Hot tea does not stop being hot just because you get angry at it. It cools down on its own. If you do not rush, if you do not grab it immediately, if you just blow on it, an insult is exactly the same. It is scorching hot the moment it is spoken. It only burns you if you grab it right away. If you wait, it cools down on its own without any effort on your part. The third principle I am giving you today is called ukenagashi, letting it flow past. In Japanese martial arts, this is a defensive technique. When an opponent strikes, you do not block it, you do not dodge. You make a soft circular movement that redirects the force of the blow. The strike does not stop. It just veers off to the side, right past you, into empty space. This takes far less strength than a hard block and leaves your opponent in a highly awkward position. Their own momentum has carried them forward, and they have lost their balance. What does this look like in a conversation? You just agree. Not like a victim surrendering, not out of fear, but like someone who cares so little about arguing that they just nod and move on. You are weird. Possibly. You think too highly of yourself. Maybe. You are never going to achieve anything. We will see. 1 word, 2 words, spoken evenly, without sarcasm, without a smirk of superiority, just perfectly neutral. And that is it. The aggressor was preparing for a fight. They lined up their arguments. They know exactly what to say if you start defending yourself. They are ready for your anger. They have an answer for it. They are ready for your tears. They know exactly how to use those against you. But they are not ready for indifference. Indifference is not coldness. It does not mean you genuinely do not care at all. It means you are so deeply rooted in knowing who you are that someone else's opinion simply does not have access to that truth. Imagine a person who knows with absolute certainty that the sky is blue. Someone walks up to them and says the sky is green. This person will not get offended. They will not get angry. They will not start trying to prove anything. They will just look at the person, think to themselves, "How interesting," and keep walking, because their knowledge of the sky does not depend on someone else's opinion of it. That is what ukenagashi is when applied to insults. An insult only holds power as long as you argue with it. While you argue, you are admitting that there might be truth to it, that it deserves your attention and energy, that it matters. When you agree, the ball just drops to the floor. The aggressor has nowhere left to go. The game is over. They lost, not because you won, but because you refused to play. There is one important thing you need to understand here. Ukenagashi only works if there is true peace inside you. If you say possibly while boiling with rage inside, it is a lie. And people sense that. Your voice is a little tighter than it should be. Your gaze is a bit too heavy. The pause is just a fraction too long. That is why this principle is not just a technique. It is the result of inner work, the kind of work I will talk about in the fifth part. But first, the fourth principle, and it is the most unexpected of them all. The fourth principle is called Kagami, the mirror. In our monastery, there is a hall with one entire wall covered in mirrors. The novices spend time there every single day, not to stare at themselves, but to learn how to do exactly what a mirror does. A mirror does not argue. A mirror does not get offended. A mirror does not get defensive. A mirror simply reflects. You come to it angry, it shows anger. You come to it smiling, it shows a smile. It adds absolutely nothing of its own. It does not interpret. It does not react emotionally. It merely hands back to you whatever you brought to it. The Kagami principle in conversation means exactly this. When someone attacks you, you gently and calmly shift their attention from you back to themselves. Not aggressively, not painfully, but with genuine, quiet curiosity. You are never going to achieve anything. That is interesting. Why is it so important to you that I fail? Something is wrong with you. Curious. Why does what is going on with me bother you so much? You always do everything wrong. An interesting perspective. What makes you watch what I do so closely? Look at what is happening here. You are not defending yourself. You are not attacking. You are simply turning the mirror around, and suddenly, everyone in the room is looking not at you, but at them. At their strange desire to humiliate, their need to control, their anxiety hiding behind a mask of aggression. Because people who tear others down always do it from their own place of pain, from jealousy, from fear, from a sense of their own smallness, from a desperate urge to feel control over at least someone. They are not attacking you. They are using you as a surface to project their own internal suffering. Kagami simply makes that pain visible, gently, without judgment, but with absolute clarity. One of my students, an executive at a major tech company in Silicon Valley, told me a story. During a meeting, a colleague publicly said to him, "Your ideas always sound great, but they never actually work in practice." In the past, he would have started defending himself, listing examples of successful projects, flushing red, boiling inside, while forcing a smile on the outside. Instead, he stayed silent for 4 seconds, looked calmly at his colleague, and said, "That is interesting. Have you been monitoring my work for a long time? What makes you pay so much attention to it?" The room went dead silent. The colleague started trying to explain something, stumbling over his words, his voice wavering. My student just nodded and said, "I see," and he moved the meeting forward. After the meeting, a few people came up to him and said, "You really put him in his place." He had not done anything intentionally. He just turned the mirror around. But here is what is crucial to understand about the Kagami principle. It is not a weapon of revenge, not a way to humiliate someone in return. If you use it out of spite, people will feel it, and it will completely backfire on you. You will just look manipulative. Kagami only works from a state of genuine, quiet curiosity when you are truly interested in what is driving this person to behave this way, what is really hiding behind their words. And right here, we arrive at something deeply important. When you start looking at an attacker with genuine curiosity, something shifts inside of you. You stop being a victim. You become an observer, an explorer, someone studying an interesting phenomenon. And it is impossible to make a victim out of someone who is simply observing. In our monastery, we call this the gaze of the mountain. A mountain does not hold a grudge against the wind. It does not get angry at the rain. It does not rejoice in the sun. It just stands there and watches all of it pass by. You can be a mountain not because you lack feelings, but because your feelings are yours, and no one can step inside and pilot them without your permission. In 1945, the monastery where I live now was almost entirely destroyed. Not by a bomb, not by fire, but by people. Those who decided that the monks were enemies of the new order. The abbot at the time, his name was Ryokan, stood and watched as they tore down walls that had taken 100 years to build. One of the young monks ran up to him in tears and shouted, "Master, why are you silent? Why are you not screaming? Why are you not fighting back?" Ryokan looked at him calmly and said, "They are destroying the walls, but they cannot destroy what is inside the walls." The monastery is not made of stones. The monastery is us. 7 years later, the monastery was rebuilt. Ryokan lived to see its reopening. He was 89 years old. He walked into the new main hall, sat down, closed his eyes, and said, "Everything is right where it belongs." The fifth principle I am giving you today is called Fudoshin, the immovable mind. Not a dead mind, not frozen, not suppressed, but truly immovable, like the center of a wheel. The wheel spins, the center holds still. A storm outside, silence inside. Most people think emotional resilience means a lack of emotion, that an invulnerable person is a cold person, someone who feels absolutely nothing. That is a profound illusion. Fudoshin is not the absence of feelings. It is the absence of their authority over your actions. You can feel pain and choose not to show it to the person begging to see it. You can feel anger and refuse to let it hijack your voice and your face. You can feel insulted and not allow that feeling to dictate your next step. This is not suppression. This is mastery. Here is the difference. When you suppress an emotion, you shove it down deep inside. It does not go anywhere. It builds up and then detonates at the absolute worst moment. Or it just quietly rots you from the inside out for years. When you practice Fudoshin, you acknowledge the emotion. You see it, you name it within yourself. This is hurt. This is anger. This is fear. And then you simply do not express it immediately, not because you are afraid, but because you are choosing the exact moment and the exact form for it. In our monastery, novices learn this through an exercise that seems brutal until you grasp its true purpose. We call it fire and water. A novice sits in meditation. A senior monk sits across from him and begins saying the most agonizing things he can possibly think of, carefully tailored based on what the novice himself confessed about his deepest fears and flaws. Precise, targeted strikes. The novice's only job is to sit, breathe, keep a neutral face, keep his hands relaxed, keep his breathing steady. Fire on the inside, water on the outside. The first few times it is virtually impossible. The body betrays you. Cheeks flush, hands clench, breathing fractures. But after a few months of practice, something shifts. Not because the words stop hurting, but because the gap between stimulus and response stretches out. Remember the first principle. It grows larger, wider, more stable. And right inside that space, the novice discovers something incredible. He discovers that he has a choice. Not to react on autopilot, not to bow down to a reflex, but to choose exactly what to show on the outside, when to show it, how to show it, and whether to show it at all. That is Fudoshin. In practice, it looks like this. The next time something hits a nerve right in that exact moment, say one word to yourself internally. Name the emotion. Hurt, anger, fear. Just name it. Do not judge it. Do not fight it. Just name it. Neuroscientists call this affect labeling. Studies show that when you put a name to an emotion, the activity in your amygdala, the part of your brain that generates panic and impulsive reactions, actually drops. It physically calms down in seconds. You are not suppressing the emotion. You are seeing it. And that alone is enough for it to lose its grip on you right then and there. The fire stays inside water on the outside. The sixth principle is the last one, and it is more important than all the others combined. I could have started with this one, but you would not have grasped its depth because without the first five, it just sounds like a cliché, like a cheap quote from a motivational poster. It is called Jibun no naka no hikari, the light inside yourself. Let me explain this through a story. Many years ago, a young man came to my monastery. He was 26 years old, successful, good-looking, sharp by all external metrics. A guy who had it all figured out. He sat across from me and said, "I am constantly humiliated at work, in my family, in my relationships, my entire life. Teach me how to fight back." I asked him when this all started. He thought for a moment and said, "Probably in childhood. My father used to tell me I was never good enough. No matter what I did, it was never enough." "And did you believe him?" A long pause. "I still believe him." Right there, that is the real reason an insult gets inside. Not because the person attacking you is too strong, but because somewhere deep down, you already agree with them. You already believe it is the truth. Their words are merely confirming what you already think about yourself. That target I mentioned at the very beginning, it is not something other people paint on you. It is something you paint on yourself. Out of other people's words that you swallowed when you were small and vulnerable. Out of situations where you were rejected and you decided it defined your worth. Out of comparisons where you fell short and accepted the loss as a life sentence. An insult only lands where a wound already exists. That is why all five previous principles, the pause, clarification agreement, the mirror, the immovable mind, they are just techniques. They work. They change your external behavior. They hand you a toolkit. But without the sixth principle, they are nothing more than beautiful armor strapped over an open, bleeding wound. Jibun no naka no hikari is the work on the wound itself. It is the slow, brutally honest process of auditing what you actually believe about yourself. Not cheap affirmations, not shouting, "I am the best," into a bathroom mirror, not pumping yourself up with fake confidence. Honest, slow, real work. In our monastery, we have a practice for this that we call Shogun, true seeing. Every night before sleep, a novice asks himself 3 questions, not out loud, but internally, slowly letting the silence sit between them. The first question: what did I do well today? Nothing grandiose, just well. One single thing, small, real. The second question: who was I today for someone else? Not what did I achieve, but who was I? Was I attentive, honest, patient, brave, even for just 60 seconds? The third question: what exists inside of me that does not depend on anyone else's opinion? Not what skills do I have, but what is intrinsically in me as a human, as a living being? 3 questions every single night, no skipping. It sounds almost too simple, I know, but here is what happens after a month of this practice. You start building up what I call a dignity bank account inside yourself. Tiny, undeniable proofs of exactly who you are. Not other people's words, Not performance reviews, not trophies. Your own raw observations about yourself. And when someone walks up with an insult, they do not hit a void. They can just pour their poison into. They hit that bank, that compounded reality. Their words simply cannot find a place to land inside you. Not because you threw up a wall, but because the space is already occupied. Occupied by you, by the real, authentic you. That young man who came to see me, he spent 3 months at the monastery. Every night, 3 questions. Every day, one small, honest observation about himself. When he was leaving, I asked him, "So, do you know how to fight back now?" He smiled and said, "I don't need to fight back anymore. There is just nothing left for them to hit." That is Jibun no Naka no Hikari, the light inside yourself. Not a blinding, screaming spotlight, but a quiet, steady flame that does not flicker when someone breathes on it. A flame that does not need anyone's permission to burn, that just exists, always, in any weather. I want to tell you what actually happened to me that morning at the meeting. Remember I mentioned at the very beginning the guy who said something brutal in front of everyone, and I just looked at him calmly? I didn't tell you the whole story then. 2 years prior to that, I was a completely different person. Not on the outside. On the outside, I always looked perfectly zen. I'm a monk. I have excellent training in projecting external peace. But inside, I was a man who was desperately starved for approval. I spent every single meeting in a state of quiet panic. Am I saying the right thing? Am I convincing enough? Do I look like an idiot? What are they thinking about me? Every single word directed at me, even the neutral ones, I would overanalyze for hours afterward, hunting for hidden criticism, hidden judgment. I was a fortress on the outside and an open wound on the inside. And this guy at the meeting, he somehow sensed it. People like that always sense it. They are like predators who flawlessly single out the most vulnerable spot in the herd. Not because they are inherently evil, but because they are profoundly wounded themselves, and their pain is just looking for a way out. He said what he said, targeted public confident, and nothing happened. Not because I deployed a technique, not because I remembered the pause or the mirror, but because by that point, for 2 solid years, I had been asking myself those 3 questions every single night. For 2 years, I had been stockpiling tiny, undeniable proofs of exactly who I am. For 2 years, I had been honestly, slowly dismantling everything I believed about myself, and there was simply no room left inside for his words to land. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear or anger. I felt something closer to compassion, because I saw right through his words to what is always standing behind them. Pain, fear, the desperate urge to feel bigger by making someone else smaller. I felt genuinely sorry for him, and that pity, not an arrogant or condescending pity, completely transformed my reaction. I wasn't silent because I couldn't think of a comeback. I was silent because I knew any answer would be completely unnecessary. That it was enough to just be present, calm, grounded, like a mountain. That is what everything I have shared with you today is actually about. It is not about techniques, not about clever phrases, not about how to win a verbal sparring match. It is about how to become a person who doesn't need to win, because they are already whole. Now, I want to give you something concrete, something practical, something you can start today, right today, not next Monday, today. Because everything I have laid out here is Kaizen, small, daily, invisible steps that compound over time. Week 1, just one thing. The pause. Ma. Every single time something strikes a nerve outwardly, Do absolutely nothing for 4 seconds. Just 4 seconds of silence. A level face, steady breathing, looking straight ahead. Nothing else. No other techniques, just this. Do this for 7 days straight in any situation. Someone rushes you for an answer. Pause for 4 seconds. Someone says something cutting. Pause for 4 seconds. Someone asks an uncomfortable question. Pause for 4 seconds. After 7 days, you will discover something wild. A lot of situations that used to feel like absolute emergencies will resolve themselves inside those 4 seconds. A lot of words that used to feel like daggers will lose their edge entirely in the silence. A lot of people who are practically begging for your reaction will start behaving entirely differently, just because you refused to hand them what they expected. Week 2. Add the question. Stack Satsu clarification right on top of the pause. One question delivered calmly. What exactly do you mean? Or, tell me more about that. Or, simply, in what sense? Train this in safe environments first, with friends, with coworkers, in totally normal conversations. Just clarify, just ask questions instead of firing off an immediate answer. The muscle of inquiry is like any other muscle. You have to train it when there is no resistance, so it is fully primed when the heavy lifting starts. Week 3. Start the evening Shogun practice. Every night before sleep, 3 questions. Write down your answers. This is non-negotiable. Do not just keep them in your head. Write them down, because ink on paper makes it real. Makes it hard evidence. What did I do well today? Who was I today for someone else? What exists inside of me that does not depend on anyone else's opinion? 3 questions, every single night. No skipping. After a month, read back through everything you wrote. You will see a real, living human being with their own traits, their own inherent value, their own quiet light. And you will realize that this person was always standing right there. You just refused to look. I want to wrap this up with the exact words my teacher said to me on my very first day at the monastery. I was 32 years old. I arrived completely broken. Years of humiliation at work, in my family, in relationships. I thought I came there to learn how to meditate. My teacher looked at me for a long time, and then he said, "You came here because you want people to stop hurting you." I nodded. "That is impossible," he told me. "People are always going to say things. They are always going to try to cut you. They are always going to hunt for targets. That is just human nature." I felt my stomach completely drop. But he continued, "You can do something else. You can remove the target. Not hide, not shut down, not turn into stone, but simply become so deeply yourself, so completely full of yourself, that someone else's words literally have nothing to hit." He poured me tea, set it down in front of me, and added quietly, "And that is true freedom." Not when no one is shooting at you, but when there is absolutely nothing left to shoot at. For 32 years, I have lived by those words. Every single day, I take one tiny step toward that freedom. One small step. Sometimes forward, sometimes just fighting to hold my ground, but always a step. That is Kaizen applied to human dignity. It is not about becoming bulletproof tomorrow. It is about becoming just a little more yourself today. A little more grounded today. A little more whole today. One evening, 3 questions, 1 pause, 1 brutally honest look in the mirror. That is enough. It has always been enough. You are enough. Drop a comment below and tell me, has there ever been a moment in your life when someone tried to publicly tear you down? And how did you handle it? No judgment here, no right or wrong answers. Just be real with me. I will reply to every single one of you, because in those stories, in your stories, there is more raw wisdom than in any monastery on earth. Hit subscribe. We have a lot more Japanese principles coming up that very few people are actually honest about. Every video is one small step. Kaizen. You know how it works. I will see you next time. Listening to this story, I am deeply moved by the realization that our greatest armor is not a hardened shell, but a quiet acceptance of who we truly are. We spend so much time desperately trying to forge the perfect shield against harsh words, completely forgetting that true peace comes from removing the target altogether. It breaks my heart to see how many of us carry the heavy burden of past wounds, allowing the fleeting judgments of broken people to define our worth. When we react with anger, we are giving away our sacred power to someone who is likely just projecting their own deep-seated pain onto us. The profound lesson here is that human dignity cannot be granted by a crowd, nor can it be stolen by a cruel remark. It is built quietly, day by day, in the silent moments when we honestly acknowledge our own goodness. I truly believe that the most radical act of self-love we can practice in this chaotic world is to master the simple 4-second pause. In that tiny sliver of space between a hurtful stimulus and our response, we reclaim our absolute freedom to choose grace over retaliation. By looking at an aggressor with genuine curiosity rather than defensive fury, we refuse to inherit their bitterness. We become like the mountain, allowing the harsh winds of someone else's insecurity to simply blow past us without eroding our foundation. This requires immense courage, the quiet kind that whispers that you are entirely enough just as you are. As we apply this to our daily lives, we must stop viewing ourselves through the fractured lenses of other people's unresolved traumas. Instead, we should actively cultivate that undeniable light inside ourselves, building a vault of self-respect that no insult can ever penetrate. Ultimately, this journey is not about winning verbal battles, but about reaching a beautiful state of wholeness where winning simply no longer matters. When we finally strip away the false beliefs we have swallowed over the years, we step into the truest, most liberated version of humanity possible. The perspectives, stories, and practices shared in this broadcast are for informational and educational purposes only and should not replace professional psychological, emotional, or medical advice. Listeners assume full responsibility for how they interpret and apply these concepts in their daily routines, and the creator holds no liability for any personal actions, emotional outcomes, or life changes resulting from the consumption of this content.